Baklava is a serious dessert. Flaky layers of phyllo filled with spiced ground nuts, butter, and honey, and it dates all the way back to the Ottoman Empire. Now, it can take on several different shapes. It has cigar-shaped rolls, turban-shaped nests, or most commonly small diamond-shaped pastries. But no matter how it's shaped, it's a serious project for the home cook.
It's serious. It's not that complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, but each one of them is very simple to do. It's always a good idea to get everything ready before you actually assemble the baklava. But at the end, you're gonna have baklava.
Yeah, hello.
So we're starting with clarifying butter. Now, you wanna use clarified butter when you're making baklava. Butter contains some milk solids, and as it bakes in the oven, those butter solids would get nice and toasty, great for flavor, but they don't look very good. And also, we want a cleaner taste, so we are gonna clarify butter. Now, this is 3 sticks of unsalted butter. Just a little small saucepan actually works great for this because we don't want a lot of surface area, we don't want browning. We're gonna turn this to medium heat. We're gonna swirl this pan, watch that butter melt. It's gonna take about 10 minutes, and during that time, those milk solids are gonna separate out, fall to the bottom, and we're gonna be left with nice butter fat. So after it melts, it's sat there for 10 minutes, we're gonna take it off heat, let it sit, cool down a little bit, and that separation will continue.
Butter is fat, water, and milk solids living in an emulsion. To clarify butter, we need to break that emulsion, and we do that with heat. During clarification, heat causes the components to settle and separate according to density. Milk solids and air turn into fluffy foam at the top. The butter fat, the good stuff, separates to the middle, and underneath the fat is the aqueous layer, which is mostly water with a smidge of sugar and minerals. After removing the foam and the aqueous layer, what's left is a beautiful, clean-tasting, clarified butter, perfect for making baklava.
All right, so here's our butter. We let it sit for 10 minutes. You can really see some of that foam on the top. We don't want to start pouring this out because we would remix everything. So a spoon is your best bet. You can just take your time. You can see all that little foam that comes off.
Yeah, the foam almost solidifies, so it comes off nice and easily.
Very easy. All right, so that's looking pretty good. We're gonna spoon off the rest of this butter fat, or as much as we can get until we get close to the bottom. And again, we wanna use a spoon for this. Now, as we get closer to the bottom, I don't wanna start really just digging my spoon in there at an angle because there's a little bed on the bottom. I might start to disturb that. I'm gonna go ahead and put this bowl down here for a moment. I'm gonna bring the saucepan over and just tilt it ever so gingerly and start to retrieve the rest of that butter fat.
So out of about 3 sticks of butter, you should get roughly 1 cup of clarified butter, but that can vary depending on the brand of butter you have.
Now, this isn't a true, pure, clarified butter. It's not completely see-through, but we did get the majority of milk solids out of there, so we're gonna really have a beautiful top on our baklava. Next up, we're making a sugar syrup. Now, it's very important for the baklava, not just for sweetening, but it's nice and sticky, and it's what keeps those layers of phyllo cohesive.
It's glue.
It's glue. It's really tasty glue. And we're making a Greek-style baklava, so honey is definitely the backbone of that, but we didn't want to use all honey. It's a little too overpowering. So we're starting off with a 1/3 cup of honey, and this is just orange blossom honey, mild flavored. You can also use Elvis's favorite, nice Tupelo honey is good.
Honey, it has a surprisingly strong flavor. We've done a lot of testing here, substituting honey for sugar, and its flavor, just even a teaspoon of it, will shine through the finished product.
You definitely know it's in there. So we're gonna augment that with 1 1/4 cups of granulated sugar. And this, of course, as it melts, it turns into a liquid ingredient, so it's still gonna be nice and sticky. And we have 3/4 cup of water. We're using some pretty traditional flavorings, starting with lemon juice. It's a tablespoon of fresh squeezed lemon juice, and 3 little strips of zest just peeled from the outside of a lemon. And you wanna make sure just to get the zest. You don't wanna get any of that white part because that's very, very bitter. A cinnamon stick, it'd be easy for us to fish that out later on. 5 cloves, and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. So I'm gonna bring this up to a boil over high heat. Just gonna stir it a little bit until that sugar is dissolved. All right, so you can see it's boiling, and now that all those flavors are infused right into our syrup, so we're gonna take it off the heat, pour it into a 2-cup measuring cup.
Those cloves and cinnamon and spice really start to smell like the holidays, just a little.
It does. Well, you know, baklava is perfect for gift giving. And you just give people 1 or 2 slices and eat the rest yourself. We want to let that cool completely. Now, again, we're making a Greek-style baklava, and usually there's 1 of 2 different types of nuts. There's all almond baklava, which has a very mild flavor, and then there's some baklavas that use all walnuts. They can be a little bitter on their own, so we're using a combination of both. And this is 8 ounces of blanched slivered almonds. We are not toasting these nuts. You actually want that pure, clean flavor to go into the baklava. And we're gonna pulse this until it's pretty finely ground. It's gonna take about 20 pulses. All right, let's get these out of there.
It's a nice even grind.
Beautiful.
But not a paste.
Not a paste. We're not making almond butter here. This is 4 ounces of walnuts. Again, these are not toasted. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna grind these until they're fairly fine, not powdery. So it's gonna take anywhere from 10 to 15 pulses. So let's get those out of there. Now, if you see any big clumps, I see a big old walnut, I'm gonna take that out because we don't want really giant pieces in our baklava. It's gonna prevent the phyllo from sticking together. So this guy's gonna go bye-bye. Let's mix these together. Almonds and walnuts can live together in harmony.
That's nuts.
All right, so that's looking pretty well incorporated. An even blend of almonds and walnuts. Now, we're gonna save a little bit of these nuts for garnish. So I'll take a tablespoon out, set it aside. For the rest of these, we do want to flavor them. Sugar's gonna go in here and it's gonna help that nut mixture fuse together. Now this is 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar and then more of the spices. We have 1 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And this is a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves, so a little bit goes a long way. And 1/8 of a teaspoon of just table salt. All right, so I'm gonna stir this together. And you do wanna take your time with this because we want all the spices mixed evenly in there. All right, we have all of our components ready. It's assembly time. Now, first up, let's talk a little bit about phyllo dough.
What a nice little bed you made it.
Nice little bed. Yes, this is a full pound of phyllo dough. We might or might not use the whole phyllo depending on how thick we want the layers. Now, we want to keep this nice and moist. We don't want it to dry out. So we're going to cover it with a little bit of plastic wrap. That's actually doing the job of keeping it from drying out. And then we're going to put a damp towel right over it. This is more for weight than anything else.
So crucial when you're working with phyllo that you make sure it doesn't dry out.
All right, so let's get over here to our pan. This is a 9 by 13 pan. This is just a regular pan, not a nonstick pan, because we are going to score the baklava right in the pan. We don't want it to mar the bottom. So we're gonna need to give this a good brushing with our clarified butter, just to help everything get out of the pan. So I'm gonna spread it on the sides and on the bottom. And the other great thing about doing this, if there's any little foam pieces at the top of your clarified butter, you can just scoop those up and put them right in the bottom of the pan. Nobody's ever gonna know.
Baklava is really held together with all that sticky, sweet glue, and that also helps it stick to the pan. So greasing the pan really well makes sure you can get it out.
That looks good. So now I'm gonna bring up a sheet of phyllo. This is the bottom layer. So if it tears a little bit, that is okay. I'm gonna place this in the pan, then I'm gonna go right back over there and cover the rest of that phyllo up. I'm gonna brush this layer with more of the clarified butter. And we saw some recipes that really just drizzled a little bit on. We want these layers of phyllo to really stick together. We don't want any kind of super flaky phyllo, maybe just on the top. So now I'm gonna get another layer of phyllo and we're gonna continue layering butter. Layer butter, layer butter, until we have about 8 layers of phyllo. All right, so that was that last sheet. It was 8 sheets of phyllo with butter in between every single sheet. So now we're gonna add some of our nut mixture. We're gonna pour in a cup of these spiced almonds and walnuts. And I'm going to use my hands and just distribute them very evenly over the bottom. We didn't want to have baklava that just had one single nut layer in there. We actually like the nuts to be distributed in a few places. That gave for a more delicate baklava. It's like a sandbox.
It's like a Zen garden.
It is. All right, so now I'm going to add another layer of phyllo right on top of these nuts. This one does not have any butter underneath it, so it can actually move quite a bit. It's a little bit tricky to brush it, so you just want to take your time. I like to hold the phyllo close to where I'm brushing and just go in short strokes. You start to go in long strokes, you're going to push it to either side. If it tears, who cares? Who's going to see it? It's perfectly fine. All right, so this is looking good, nice and buttery. Another sheet of phyllo. Are you seeing a pattern?
I'm seeing a little bit of a pattern.
Now I'm going to continue again, building more layers of phyllo and butter. In total, in this layer, it's going to be 6 layers of phyllo and butter. And that's nice because we wanted thin layers of phyllo. We found some baklava that really had thick, substantial layers of phyllo. It was just too tough. So when you're buttering this, you really want to pay attention to buttering those edges because they will curl up if they don't have enough butter on them. So the solution to life, add more butter. Another cup of our almond and walnut mixture. And again, spread it out. All right, so that looks good. So now another 6 layers of phyllo and butter. The final layer of almonds and walnuts and spices goes
Ooh, starting to see some empty bowls. That's a good sign.
It's true. Spread it out.
All right, so if I have my tally right, we have 8 layers of phyllo, cup of nuts, 6 layers of phyllo, cup of nuts, 6 layers of phyllo, the rest of the nuts, 8 more layers of phyllo.
Woohoo! You nailed it. All right, so we are at that last layer of phyllo. So that is looking great. Now for this top layer, I'm not going to brush it with butter right away. First of all, I want to press this. I'm just pressing these layers to make them nice and cohesive, not only on the top, but underneath, so that later on when we go to slice a baklava, it's going to slice beautifully. And we're going to work from the center out and hopefully get any of those air bubbles from the top. So that is looking beautiful, nice and compressed. All right, so now we are going to butter the top, not with just a little bit, but 4 tablespoons more of that clarified butter. We found some baklava recipes were just a little too conservative on the top here, and we found that the phyllo would either dry out and get tough, or would just flake away too delicate.
Hello.
So again, this is just a regular baking pan, not a non-stick, and that's because we want to cut it right in the pan. Best tool for the job is a serrated knife. A bread knife works great. We're going to cut this into diamonds. This is why I love using a rectangular pan so much. It's going to give us the diamonds, and I'll show you how. I make my first cut from corner to corner. And again, just take your time. Really, you're using the tip of the knife at this point, making sure that we get through to the very bottom. Now we're going to make 3 cuts on either side. So we just want to go about halfway, make our cut, and then another cut in between those, and one right down here. Same thing on this side, halfway across, break the middle. Now, as you start to really cut it, sometimes you have to hold down on that top layer of phyllo dough. And right in here. All right, so I'm going to rotate the pan 90 degrees, and now I'm going to do the same thing at this angle from corner to corner.
Very clever.
This is when you really have to start taking care, because you could lift some of those sheets of phyllo. I'm going to scooch this around. Technical term. All right, and then the same thing, 3 cuts on either side.
It's fun to see that classic diamond shape emerge after all these cuts.
Girl's best friend. So we're going to put this in a 300-degree oven, very low oven. We want us to spend a lot of time in there, about an hour and a half, and that's because we want it to bake thoroughly. And about halfway through baking, I'll rotate the pan. Oh, surprise! Beautiful, beautiful baklava. Absolutely gorgeous.
And you can smell the nuts and the little bit of spice.
You sure can. It doesn't quite look like baklava. We haven't even touched the sugar syrup. So, first of all, I want to take 2 tablespoons of that and just reserve it for a moment. There we go. I'm going to pour the rest of our sugar syrup right into these fissures.
You hear that sizzle?
That's actually a really good sign, because we found that a hot pan and room temperature syrup worked perfectly, really to get the best cohesion. And I'm taking care to just get it into those little cracks. And I don't want to get too much on the top. I don't want to flood the top with the syrup, because it might move the upper layers of the baklava.
You have a very steady hand.
But I shoot with this hand. So that is looking gorgeous. It looks like a ton of sugar syrup, but believe me, it is all going to soak right into those little diamonds. Now the top, we want to drizzle over our remaining 2 tablespoons of sugar syrup. And that's just enough so that we can add a pinch of nuts right to the center, and it's going to stick right on. You know, you spent all this time making a baklava, might as well make it look as beautiful as possible. We're going to finish this up. We're going to let it sit here for 3 hours to cool down. And then we're going to cover it with foil. We're going to let it sit for another 8 hours. And during that time, all that baklava is going to soak up that sugar syrup and become very cohesive. The wait is over. All of our work is done. And you're going to see this payoff is huge. You can actually keep this under foil at room temperature for up to 10 days.
This tastes so much better than the ones that you find at bakeries, because it actually tastes fresh. You can taste the nuts, you can taste the spices.
And there's a little bit of that honey flavor, but it's not overbearing. Sometimes you get these, they just taste like pure honey. I love honey, but I want my baklava to taste like other things as well.
The phyllo on the top is a little bit lighter and crisper. The phyllo on the bottom is a little bit heavier and a little chewy thanks to all that syrup. Well, obviously, this is plate cleaning delicious.
That's a good compliment.
Thank you, Bridget. To make baklava, patiently layer sheets of phyllo dough, clarified butter, and spiced ground nuts into a baking pan. Compress the layers with your hands and score it with a serrated knife before baking. Drizzle with a sugar honey syrup right out of the oven, and there you have it. From our test kitchen to your kitchen, the ultimate recipe for baklava. Thanks for watching America's Test Kitchen. What'd you think?
Well, leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or you can just say hello.
You can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
I'll see you later.